Today's segment is on entrepreneurship and the arts, and joining us is Laurie Parker. You have been an entrepreneur since the term was used, right?
If you
or
say
used
so.
the way it is today.
Yeah, if you say so. Honestly, it's funny because that particular term has never really been in my lexicon, but I guess technically that's what I am. I've just always looked at myself as, I think I've given myself titles self-employed artist or writer, and have not ever actually used that term, but I suppose it does fit.
Well, you have a very unique entrepreneurial journey, and you're a writer, you're an artist, and you've managed to make a career of this for decades. And take us back, because you didn't set out to do this.
No, I didn't. I was really at a place where I was struggling because I had been a teacher for a while, and I knew that was not what I wanted to do. You kind of learn by doing.
Well, take us back to college, because you started out as an engineer.
No, I started out in education. I majored in education the first time. I taught for only 3 years before I realized that is not for me. Just primarily because teachers have to be on all the time. I felt like it was almost like a performance, and I'm sure people who have more of an inclination to be a teacher don't feel that way. But I just hated it. I loved my students. I loved kids, and that was really why I got into it. But I found out sometimes careers are not what you think they're going to be, and I quickly learned that wasn't for me. So that's when I went back to school in engineering. And I thrived academically. I loved the academic part, but unfortunately, as I got into my upper level courses and started really thinking about it, because I was really just floundering. The engineering thing, I think maybe I was too young to even make that decision. I just knew I didn't want to teach, and it's like, okay, so what can I do? So I gave that a try, but I found as I got closer to the point of getting out in the world with a job in that a lot of engineers end up in management. And I think the thing I had found out most of all through teaching is I tend to be an introvert when it comes to work. That's why I did so well academically, because it's just, this is the assignment, you sit and do it. But as far as trying to manage other people or work with other people on projects and stuff, I don't know. Like I said, you do the wrong thing to figure out what the right thing is. And my calling has always been art and writing, and I do like to use the term calling, because from the time I was old enough to hold a crayon, I was writing little stories and doing artwork. And even in high school, before I majored in education, I put that out there sometimes. Oh, I want to major in art, and I would just get shut down. Oh no, because there's no jobs in that. Because this was in the dark ages before we had computers and graphic arts. And to be an art major, you would either end up being an art professor or living on the streets, which so I had kind of been pushed away from that, but that was always my true calling. So I think I had to just experiment with other things, and I came back to what I was always meant to do. That's how I see it.
All right, so you're taking engineering classes and you're getting great grades in engineering. When did you say, I just can't do this, I'm going to pivot, I'm going to follow my heart instead of my head, and how did you process
Well, the
all
funny
that?
thing is, it was while I was in engineering school. I was working part-time at the library, paying my way through school, had some scholarships, but needed money, so I was working as well. And another way to make money was I was selling these little pins, as in brooches, made from paper and epoxy that I had done as a hobby. And so I would do the Mississippi State Holiday Bazaar that used to be held in the old Cold Union and the Prairie Arts Festival, and make a little money. So then when I decided I wasn't going to do the engineering thing, I was in Florida briefly. I was dating somebody down there, so I was in Florida and I was floundering. I was like, okay, great, I'm not going to be a teacher, I'm not going to be an engineer, I'm 29 years old, I'm single, I've got to have money, what am I going to do? And it was it was a time of much limbo and angst. And so, but in the meantime, in Florida, there were these big festivals every weekend, these street festivals, art festivals. So I did a couple of those, and I was like, wait a minute, I made more money this weekend than I did as a teacher for a whole month selling my art. And of course, granted, this was 20 years ago and it was Mississippi, so that's not saying much for a teacher's salary, but still, it was like, wait, this is pretty awesome. So I decided, it was in 1993, so I looked at it as an experiment. I thought, you know what, I'm just going to gig. I called it gigging. I'm going to have a festival lined up every weekend possible for a year and see how that works. And lo and behold, it worked out. I enjoyed it. That was the bottom line, is that I loved it. And I couldn't even believe that, wow, I am making an income doing this thing that was kind of a hobby that I love. So, and then after a year of doing it, I was real kind of stoked about, I'm going to do this again next year. And I had networked some, and I had my stuff in some galleries, and so I was kind of getting my name out there. And I was all excited, and lo and behold, I got a quote-unquote real job offer. Which was something I had been, I just felt there was just this, I had been raised to be real practical and pragmatic. And even though I was liking what I was doing and I was making money, I just felt like, my parents don't approve. And I even saw one of my old bosses one time in like the Kroger parking lot or something, and he goes, "So are you still not doing anything?" So it was just like I felt like people didn't look at it as legit or something. But so when I got this quote unquote real job offer, I actually sat and I had a piece of paper, and it was like, these are the reasons I should take the quote unquote real job, and this is why I should keep doing what I've been doing. And the keep doing what I love was a very short list, because the other list had benefits, all the things that you think. But that was what I consider the most pivotal moment in my life, because I answered with my heart and not my head. And I think that's why my life turned out the way it did, and I don't regret it. And it's
okay. So you were doing the things you were making, and where did you pivot and also start to think about writing? So I was going around the state doing art festivals and little markets, and then my jewelry was being also sold in some stores. And it was in doing that I became acutely aware of the fact that in the state of Mississippi there is an excellent market for things that are either made in Mississippi or have a Mississippi theme. And so that's what led to me doing my first children's book. Because growing up, because I do the writing and the art, I had always kind of dreamed of doing a children's book, because that's a product that would combine art and writing. And I in particular like to write in rhyme. So children's book was just, but I had looked into that way back in my 20s, and to get a national publisher to do a children's book, I mean, you've got more chance of winning the lottery, seriously. So, but I thought, gosh, but if I could do a book that's just in Mississippi, a children's book, because there really had not ever been one at that time. The problem was getting it manufactured, and this was really before, this was pre-internet, and I had a little home PC, but I mean, it was a funny little contraption. So, because self-publishing and doing books now is a whole different can of worms. But at this time, you pretty much were going to have a publisher, and it's a book about Mississippi. So I had two shots. There was the University of Mississippi Press, and then this little company called Quail Ridge Press, set in Brandon, Mississippi, who primarily did cookbooks, but they had also published a few regional titles. So I knew they were, this is it. If they'll do this, it's going to work out. And fortunately, they were sold on my idea. I wrote them a letter, and they were sold on it, and that kind of was the second most pivotal moment in my life, because that kind of changed the direction of my life as well. Well, tell us the premise of the book.
Well, the book was, and the whole thing came to me in the bathtub, because I immediately thought, okay, a children's book about Mississippi, and it just immediately came to my head all the funny town names, because I had been traveling around the state, and I grew up going around the state because my daddy was a basketball coach. So I had long been aware of how many fun town names we have, including so many that have, are of Indian origin. And I thought, that would lend itself to almost a Dr. Seuss style rhyming book. So I came up with the lost dog named Skippy, who is missing in Mississippi, and his owner goes all around the state on a kind of crazy search. So that's where it kind of all started on the author, because my career really has two legs. There's the artist and there's the author, and so that was when the author thing started for me.
So you get the book published, and you have to go sell it. So it's a little bit different than jewelry. How'd you decide you were going to?
Well, I had a lot of contacts already. I knew gift stores all over the state, and having been a teacher, I knew that teachers were going to go nuts over this book, because they didn't have that kind of material, especially fourth grade teachers, that they teach state geography and history. So that was really kind of how I had sold Quail Ridge Press on it. I said, we can just market this to school teachers, school libraries, and I said, I've got the gift thing down for you. I can get you in. I already know gift stores are going to carry this, and it was such a happy experience, because not only did gift stores carry it, but and let me back up and say this was what I knew: the fact that these little bitty towns were mentioned in the book. If you're from Bude, Mississippi, or Nittayuma, Mississippi, you don't ever expect to see that town in a book. And so, that made people want the book. So every little town, if they didn't have a gift shop, they had a pharmacy or a florist. And the things I remember most are the Piggly Wiggly in Iuka, Mississippi, a fruit stand in Seminary, Mississippi, and some co-op, farmers co-op somewhere in the Delta, all had that book. So it was fun. The book was called Everywhere in Mississippi, and it was literally being sold everywhere in Mississippi. So it was a fun experience.
And from there you published?
From there, Quail Ridge Press, because of the success of that book, they were willing to do others. And I stayed on the state theme for a while. I did something with Alabama, Texas, Louisiana, but my heart was not in doing other states, because then when I went to my events, I wanted something to sell to my customers. So then they were willing to take a chance with me on a book called The Turtle Saver, which is my personal favorite of all my children's books, because it's just a chicken soup for the soul type of book. And then from there, what I would consider kind of my third kind of leap in my career was when I decided to start self-publishing, because I had been with this publisher and I wanted to do some things, that I wanted to do, and I wanted to have more control over my artwork. And so in 2003, I did my first self-published book. And it was a risk, but not a big one, because I had done so much of the legwork for the publisher. I was the one out there meeting people and going to the stores, calling on stores. So the best part of it was, I had to spend the money up front. That was the difference, because the publisher had been fronting the cost of production. Now I had to deal with the printer and the factory and all that, but once I had the books in hand, I made more profit, obviously.
So you think it's easier or harder now for entrepreneurs to get started?
Well, in my particular career, much easier in as far as books, because people can, you can get software that'll lay the book out for you. And I've never really had any experience with this, but supposedly there are companies online that'll handle all angles of it. They'll handle doing your layout, the printing, I think maybe even marketing. And I've kind of done. Mine's more of a traditional way of producing a book, because I go directly to a printer. But there are liaisons and things now, like I said, all these companies online that'll, I think you could probably just Google self-publishing and there's just a world of info.
Okay, so it's easier for you, but that means it's easier for anyone. So that might create some more just clutter out there. Everybody, I'm publishing a book.
Well, my line is everybody and his brother has done a book, and in particular, everybody and his brother has done a children's book. And not to knock that genre, but children's books, if you've ever really looked at them, there are things out there that a third grader could have written the text. It doesn't take necessarily a lot of thought or cleverness, and I love to write. So that was when I made a new leap. I decided to start doing novels, because the children's books just didn't allow me to engage in my love for language and words and constructing and stuff like I wanted. So then in 2011, I started thinking about writing novels, and I released my first one in 2013, and then I wrote one in 2014, 2015, 2016, took a break in 2017, and then another one in 2018. And that's a very time-consuming endeavor, because I start on a book in January and I work on it whole hog, full-time, until it's finished, and each one of them has taken me around 6 months. And then it's a month of editing, and then it's time to start marketing and going to my events and selling.
So is self-discipline a requirement to do what you do?
Huge. Self-discipline has been huge. And no one but the proverbial fly on the wall can understand how hard I've had to work to make a career at what I've done. Because first of all, let me say that I have by no stretch of the imagination become rich doing it. This has been strictly because this is where I find my joy and what I love doing. But I have supported myself. And, yeah, discipline, because, I mean, weekends, nights, for years, and then hauling things around from show to show. And, you know, I'm the secretary. When you're self-employed and you do what I do, you know, I'm the one answering the phone, I'm the custodian, I'm the one loading the heavy boxes of books into the car and then getting to an event and taking them out of the car, because it's, you know, it's a lot of stuff.
You still do the art?
I have never quit. You know, that's just it, because I've never made enough money to stop. You know, I do both. I've had to do both to make enough to get by. And the art leg of it, you know, of course, at that one point, the art and the writing came together with the children's books. But even so, I was still doing the jewelry, and then I sell, because my medium is collage. I'm not a painter. My children's books were illustrated with collage, and this is cutting out and gluing paper to create the images. My jewelry is also a collage process. Everything basically I've ever done art-wise is a collage process, but I've had to like evolve with that through the years, because, you know, you got to stay fresh and have new things of interest. So, you know, I've done ornaments and different types of jewelry. My latest thing that I've been doing a lot of is canvases, where I do like images of dogs or birds, and it's made entirely from words cut out of magazines. And that's the kind of thing I love doing, because attention to detail. And
so you've got to have discipline and patience.
Yeah, discipline and patience, definitely, for what I do.
All right, so if someone is maybe thinking of starting their own journey, entrepreneurial journey in arts, do you have any words of wisdom or advice for them?
There's two important things I can say about that. One is just I need to explain to people the means by which I have sold stuff. You know, if you wanted to have a website, a mail order website, or a storefront, certainly you can do that. But I never had either. I've never had to rent a building to have a, you know, storefront. I have strictly sold my products for 3 decades now by being a vendor at events. And like I said, with the art, I started out doing a lot of art festivals, but then there are a lot of indoor holiday markets and events like that you can do. And Mississippi's a great state to live in, I have to say, if you want to do that kind of thing, because there are quite a few really big events. One that I did for years that was really huge for me as far as networking and building my customer base is something called Mistletoe Marketplace in Jackson, which is put on by the Junior Leagues. And Junior Leagues in just about any big southern city will have one of these holiday markets. And the cool thing about it is, for just a one-time fee, you can take some product that you've done, creative, whatever, candle. You know, I see people that sell candles. I've met people that have honey they're doing, soap. But just for that fee, you have an opportunity to see how the public will respond to what you've made. And you can test out prices. You can see maybe which design is going to get a better response. You can hand out business cards. So these events are excellent. And I know big companies that got their start that way, actually. So it's, you know, that's something that you could do that's maybe not as daunting as, you know, you don't have to feel like you have to run out and open a store. So that's something I can offer. And then just in general terms, it's just the whole fact that I took a risk, I did what I loved, I used my talents, and so, you know, I would like to encourage people to know that it can be done, you know.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with our budding entrepreneurs out there. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And we hope you found this segment helpful.